Welcome to the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. On Mondays, you will receive direct therapeutic support from a licensed therapist or professional connected to the mental health field. They will provide therapeutic and educational resources to help you have a healthier relationship with your family members. On Wednesdays, you will receive direct tips and resources to help you get through the stuck places that prevent many people from having the relationships with their families and significant others that they desire. On Fridays, we want you to visit our blog, which can be found at www.blackmftmatters.com, which holds additional resources and action steps that you can begin implementing immediately to improve your relationships. This is necessary because we love that you are listening, but we want you to take action too. While you are there, please grab our A to Z Relationship Bootcamp and be provided with the skills you need to immediately communicate better within your relationships. Please note that while the therapists on podcasts are therapists, they do not serve as your therapist unless you have signed a confidential agreement with them confirming that relationship. Thank you in advance for listening, and we hope you are inspired. All right, it's time for the show. Here is your host, Dr. Connie Omari.
Hey, and welcome to the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. Today's guest is Dr. LaQuanda Jefferson. Hi, Dr. Jefferson.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing amazing.
Good. Well, let me take a moment to introduce you to our audience. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. Dr. Jefferson is an international marriage and family therapist registered in Finland, Norway, England, and South Africa. She is a certified family life educator in the United States who is a training facilitator for those seeking professional licensure in the United States in the many fields of the helping profession, as well as the owner of Familial Bonds International Trauma and Professional Competency Center for Therapists. She is the owner of Familial Bond Psychotherapy and Consultation Services, operating primarily out of Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. She is a social justice advocate, clinician mentor, and public figure who speaks on a host of topics internationally around systems, frameworks, and is in the process of releasing her first official theory for treatment providers who are integrative practitioners in the helping field. That is a lot, Dr. Jefferson.
It is. Like when you read it out.
Yes. I mean, your hands are just full. They have to be.
Yeah. So most days, I'm really good with the time management component. I kind of maximize that element of things. Yeah. So I'm real big on scheduling and kind of where I fit what in to play.
Awesome. Well, I mean, you have to be. You started as a medical doctor. You transitioned into the mental health field. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you've been able to do that?
Well, I started off, I was in the United States Army. I retired after 20 years and 8 months or so.
Wow.
And when I retired during what we call terminal leave, it's like this space in time where you have all this use or lose. You're going to lose it anyway, right? I decided to start my education to become a mental health practitioner and to finish up that component because I figured I didn't want to become and practice medicine in the United States because of the way the pharmaceutical companies are set up, and medicine is just a little bit different on this end.
Okay. So you got your medical degree where?
University of Wisconsin.
Oh, so you did get
medicine
in the United States. Okay.
Yeah. So the military paid for that.
Oh, awesome. Wow.
Their tuition reimbursement, tuition assistance programs.
Okay.
And I've studied also abroad in China. Chinese medicine is a huge component, I think, to the whole understanding holistic approaches, understanding how the human body works and responds to homeopathic medicine and that kind of thing. So I was definitely grateful for that experience, because when I did decide to become an integrative practitioner and kind of work with some folks at the Amen clinics here in the United States, it helped to tie things in kind of in the direction that I wanted to go, because I'm really, really big into Ayurveda, helping people heal and reveal different layers of themselves that they tend to suppress when we are in very distressful situations and things like that, in a natural way that doesn't cause side effects and imbalances or further imbalances in the brain. So, yeah.
That is impressive. Wow. Well, I think that's really important information to have, especially as we transition into kind of what our topic is today. And we're going to be talking about finding your life purpose. And I thought, there's no better person that can help us do that than you, Dr. Jefferson, just because of the way that you have clearly done that. I mean, it sounds like, you are not afraid to jump out there and really go for whatever it is that you want out of life. And we've got listeners who would love to have this type of background or experience or just drive. So I guess what I want to go from here is how you certainly have had you can't get this far without having some level of resistance. So what is it about your resistance or your personality or whatever that helped you to kind of persevere?
I would probably say I was reared in a way that, was kind of outcome based. My father is he was an outcomes based person. And even now, in a space where he's no longer with us physically, his spirit lives on, and it continues to kind of press me to persevere in situations that look difficult or seemingly impossible in the moment. And I think that one of the biggest things that he taught me is that when you do decide or commit yourself to something, it's really important that you follow through. And for me, the follow through, the outcome has been, I guess, what has driven me up to this point, before and now. And that's just how I am. I kind of set up the end game, and then I allow myself to kind of have some grace and, have some space and permission giving to take my time with setting up the objectives as I'm moving along that process. And so it has a lot to do with kind of introspect, or digging deep within and looking within to see what is going to prevent you from achieving that outcome. And then, of course, after you are honest with yourself, you look at some of the things that you're like, okay, I definitely want to change this, So realigning some of your energy, making sure you got the right kind of energy centered around you. And that means that sometimes you have to eliminate some of the people that you've drawn close to in your life, because as you move on through the different phases and stages of life, some of the people that you were with in your previous experiences are not meant to be in your latter experiences in life in the same way. So repositioning energy and understanding and tethering yourself to the right types of energy and your passions. The curiosity component has a lot to do with it.
Very good. I just want to piggyback off of something that you said and see if you can speak a little bit more clearly on that. I think a lot of times we grow up thinking that the people who are external to us are going to have the biggest influence on us. So, maybe the mailman or the corner store, person. But do you find that sometimes it's the people that are the closest to you that have the biggest impact, especially when they express some level of doubt in your ability to be successful? In other words, you mentioned your dad. Your dad seemed to be encouraging for you, but imagine he wasn't. Imagine if he said, you know what, you can never become a doctor. Would that have a bigger influence on you, or would the person at the nail salon that you don't know really have a bigger impact on you?
I think for me, my father had a greater impact, and he was an attorney, and I come from a long line of attorneys. And so he wasn't very supportive of what I saw for myself. He was more supportive of what he saw for me. Mm-hmm. And he was like, okay, well, before you become this, you have to do this. So it's up to you how you make that happen. And so that's probably what built more resiliency in me. Maybe he didn't know it then.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just I did ask, did he want you to become an attorney?
Yeah.
Okay, just curious. But you did your own thing. You obviously became very, very successful. And the point I was making, and I hope that the audience is able to take from this, is that, you know, a lot of times we are not prepared for the inner critic that's in our circle, right? As you know, we always think the stranger danger piece. But the people who typically influence us the most are the people closest to us. So like you were saying, Dr. Jefferson, you want to be careful with who you bring into your space, because you could bring the wrong person that tells you can't do it enough time, and you'll start to believe it.
Yeah. And, you know, the realities around that are, you know, if you have to have healthy energy, right?
Absolutely.
So I think one of the things for me, one of the greatest things was like for my father, he was just like, you know, we're smart in this way, you know, or the fact that you're a woman, because like in my country, in Finland, everything is around gender roles, right? Preparing a person for their purpose, and their purpose essentially is about culture. Absolutely. And we're very culture driven folks. So it's like, you know, women have to do this and men have to do that. So for me, I was always one that was curious and attempting to defy the odds. I came up during a heavily segregated time period in the world. Wow. And that's why my parents were separated. So these are things I think that built a certain level of resiliency, because I was like, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm a woman, but, you know, I'm going to do what I want. Right. You know, I'm going to accomplish these things. And yeah, one day I'll rest in my femininity and allow my man to lead, but I'll still have this, because this is what I want to know. I want to help people, and it'll look like this. I think that over the course of my lifespan, however, because I have always been really curious, I learned that helping people could look different ways.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so you go from one element, and the transition was because I felt I saw more of the harm in the profession as I was seated. And so I decided, okay, well, yeah, if I'm not doing this to the capacity, the fullest capacity where my spirit is leading me to only manifest the great components of health and wellness, then I don't want to do it at all. So for the more freedom component, the more flexibility component, then I pursued psychotherapy. And I felt like it was a way more impactful thing at this here and now. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. Yeah, we do appreciate your service and your transition and your ability to work through so you can do this.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. What's the one thing that you wish Black families knew about pursuing your goals?
I think the one thing that I wish that Black families knew in general, it's probably that the sky is the limit. What you set out for yourself is what you have the capability to accomplish, and your perception will sometimes cloud your ability to be able to step into your purpose. So realigning yourself with the right energy within that allows you to expand your capacity to function and to be successful means that sometimes you have to look at things for what they are in life, but also be more specific about what those things mean for you, and make that thing a positive thing, whatever the experience is, because lots of negative experiences can happen over a lifespan, but it doesn't mean that it has to be negative for us. Negative experiences can yield positive lessons. Taking the lessons from experiences is what matter in the grand scheme of things, because we have to move into a place of emotional maturation. Absolutely. Where we're recognizing the lessons and we're utilizing them to our fullest capacity to succeed in life. And so I always tell people one of my main themes is growth is inevitable, but maturation is a choice. We have to choose to mature through the experiences that life yields to us appropriately.
I love it. I want to know a little bit more, if you can speak to our audience about growing up in Finland, and being in did you say it was racial unrest? I'm trying to think of the words that you used.
Yeah, racially divided when I came to America.
Oh, when you came to America. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so you didn't have that experience in Finland. You didn't get it till you came here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, now I feel real bad.
Finland, we're all, and it's like in other countries, and I've lived in the vast majority of countries for a length of time, but in other countries, it's not the same as here. Everybody, I think, in America has this idea that racism is something that started and was rooted and booted in America, then it spread everywhere. But the idea of race only exists here. We don't have black or white or none of that. We're culture based.
Oh, that's what you were saying. Okay.
And other countries are also culture based. So it doesn't matter what your skin tone is. And Black people think that every Black person comes from Africa. You know, there are no white people that come from Africa innately and things like that. And a lot of those myths, I think, have to be removed because there are people of every shade and color that live and grow and are originally from all parts of the world, and they look different ways. So I think that for me, when I was exposed to racism, and, you know, my father explained it to me as I was growing up, you know, he was just like, you know, this is the reason your birth mother is not around. This is what she looks like. This is what this is. This is what our relationship was like. And, you know, I was visiting a friend in America, and we hooked up. And when she said she was pregnant, because my grandparents are mixed, her father, he had some racial biases against white people. And
is your mother white?
My mom is a Black woman, but her dad, which is my grandfather, is the son of a slave and a slave owner.
Oh,
so it's a lot of history and a lot of, I think, negative, impactful history back for him then, that kind of shaped his views. And it was a protective thing. So my mom just thought that the worst, right? If he finds out I'm pregnant by a white guy, you know, all bets are off. And so that disappointment component and what will he do thing, you know, because there was a lot of ways things were different back then.
Absolutely. You know, and I'm glad you're bringing this perspective up. My husband's actually from Ghana, and, you know, the way he looks at success is very different than where it is here. To a point where, what am I trying to say? He doesn't think about barriers in ways that we do.
Right.
And then though what he has been committed to has been very, very well, because they had to pay for everything. Like they had to pay for school.
They paid for school, elementary school.
Like,
I love it.
You go to school free here, and you can't stop. You don't want to go to school in the morning. What do you mean?
Yeah, we don't have. There is no government assistance or housing programs and things like that. We don't have any of that. Everything is very community centered. Everything is very, I like to say individualistic, but also collectivism. As far as the mindsets of the people, we all band together to help out people that are in unfortunate circumstances, even though we have like jobs in the city and things like that. As things were developing more, you would still be very much tethered to your family's farmland and things like that, because somebody's got to cultivate that land, right? So I think duplicity and roles and things like that, I think those ideals I was already raised with, and also roles in that system was a huge component for myself. So I think that in America, a lot of Black people are missing that link that ties them to their true purpose and their true culture.
And you can speak to this as someone who works in trauma. But when a community or individual, whatever, has been traumatized, you begin to doubt the senses that are born within you. Like when you say ouch, that hurts, and you're taught that you can't say that, and you can't feel that, and you can't believe that, then you start to believe that you can, so you lose touch with your person. That's essentially what I think trauma, one of the biggest symptoms of trauma is. And, you know, so it's refreshing to talk to someone who's, you know, been in spaces where, you know, they've constantly been encouraged to find, well, I don't know. Tell me, like, how can we bridge this? How can a person who's been through something traumatic, and we've done other episodes on trauma. I think a lot of people don't even understand that. But what you just described is trauma. when a group of people grow up not knowing who they are or not knowing how to connect with who they are, have the type of racial barriers as you described that feed that narrative. I mean, how many of us, when I was in high school, I knew one Black principal, and that was my uncle. One. We didn't have, Obama was not president yet. You know, I had never thought a Black person would be in that White House unless they were cleaning it.
Right.
You know? So, you know, there were no Black doctors in my neighborhood. I had some in my family, but in terms of me having access to them, and I will admit that has helped me to see Black doctors, to see Black attorneys. But I recognize a lot of the Blacks that I grew up around did not have that. So when you take into consideration the trauma of a community that just doesn't have access to these resources, and needing to find your purpose, but not knowing how to connect to it because the society that you live in makes that pursuit more challenging. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling now. Can you help me out a little bit?
Well, no, sometimes we're in situations. So I say that perception is reality, right? So when we talk about the neuroscience, the neurocognition of people, humanity, what makes us and drives us as human beings, like what shapes our personalities and things like that, has a lot to do with not only our perception, but the perception of the people that imprinted themselves on us, so our parent caregivers during attachment. And so if they believe and move and think in a certain way, then so shall we, until we learn and move and think in a different way, because we've been impacted differently by our society and environment, the way that our culture now shapes us outside of parent caregiver. So if a lot of times Black culture, American culture, I'm going to say that American culture cultivates a sense of inferiority and superiority in people before they know they've done that.
Absolutely.
And so, through the education system, and I hear a lot of Black people complain about the education system oftentimes, but I don't see them doing anything different. And then, like, I know there are a lot of people that are clinicians. I hear them ask all the time, like, how do you do that? How do you manage to homeschool your kids? Because I'm a mom of many kids. I have 11 kids total. 7 of them are now adults, and
you
4 are not.
You have 11 children?
Yeah.
Get out of here!
Yeah.
I wish I could see her. She is fly. I was even surprised that she was been in the Navy for like 20 years or something. I'm like, she does not look
I'm telling you.
Oh my gosh.
It's I think it was interesting. I was taking a picture yesterday, and I wasn't taking a picture of myself. Like, my other half is taking the picture, and he was like, "Oh, I got the picture above," and I was like, "No, I don't want everybody knowing I got 1 million kids." And so, like, I was like, "We're gonna crop that out."
Oh my goodness! My goodness!
But no, like, I think what happens is, my kids, though, they have taught me what it looks like to have children that are raised in certain cultures versus American culture. My older kids, the oldest 6, there are 3 sets of twins.
Get out of here!
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm sorry. So your oldest 6 were both the 3 sets of twins? They had twin, and then another twin, and then another twin. Wow.
And it's a little bit of distance between them. So the oldest ones are 31, then 26, almost 27, and then 21. So
wow.
Though, for me, I was able to see them come up different ages, apparently, different groups of friends, and society was changing a little bit. But they were able to come up in like Germany, Finland, Norway.
That's what I was going to ask.
Japan. You know what I mean? They got like various exposures in Africa and things like that. Now, the younger kids, even though they had like some exposure to these countries, I was phasing out and moving more towards America, as far as like my movements, preparing for, retirement, things like that. And so their life experiences are a lot different So they're very, I say, Americanized. They're very different in their personality shapings and things like that. And I think all of them are, but in a different way. So American school system, I probably put maybe 3 of my kids through an American school system for maybe a couple of years. And after that, I was like, yeah, no.
Wow. And
they were, yeah, because they kept trying to skip them 3 grades ahead and things like that, because I teach at home first and then introduce them to the school system. In American school system, you don't have to pay for it. So
right.
You know what I mean? Send them on. Let's see what happens. But they just were not being challenged. And a lot of the things that they were learning, I needed them to unlearn, because those things started to reduce their capacity for seeing themselves in their purpose and being as driven as the older kids.
I love that. Wow.
Yeah. So we went back to the home.
So you basically have like firsthand lived experience just in your children based off of what we.
So I'm able to see the differences, and they've been a lot of my research, you know, my little guinea pigs, if you will. Like when I go back and now that I think about what their lives were like and what life's experiences yielded for them separately, because we converse a lot. We're a communication type family. And so they give me a lot about their experiences and stuff like that. And I'm really grateful for that, because they are able to share on that level with me. But I think that the most impactful thing is resiliency factors are built not necessarily out of the trauma in and of itself, but perceptual resonance. Yes. So the way that we receive the world around us, I think sometimes like Black people say to themselves, like, well, I've been conditioned to think that I am lesser than my ancestors were, so am I. And there are a lot of things that we're missing from American history books and things like that, you know. And so I think that in buying into that narrative, it creates a space where cognitively, and everything starts in your brain, right? You're telling yourself that, you know, you were lesser than because your predecessors were less than, and they really weren't. You know, Black American people, when I was introduced to the United States and as I was coming up, were very prideful folks with a very rich culture. Absolutely. Slavery did not make them feel lesser than.
No, it didn't.
It empowered them. And post-slavery, they were some of the greater folks to be around because they were so successful in building. You know, a lot of people don't know the world before Black Wall Street left because they tried to erase that. And I'm happy now that, you know, through advocacy and things like that, they're trying to finally reveal and let some people know what really happened there, because I think that Black people need to know where they really come from. And I think that will empower them to move to a place where they're more resilient and they feel more driven, because I think that if you condition yourself that society is against you, your perceived experiences, right, will be very negative until somebody else proves you wrong. So you're holding somebody else accountable for your own growth. You know, I saw the series on, what's that? HBO Max or Netflix. Okay. Have you seen it? No, Prime, I think.
It's called Them? I have not seen it.
A lot of other clinicians that are Black clinicians and white clinicians have told me that they were extremely triggered when they watched it, right? So what that tells me is that I mentioned that I'm an outcomes-based person, right?
Absolutely.
I'm like, where is this going?
Where is it?
But having some of the experience and having witnessed some of those experiences firsthand, it was actually eye-opening to see somebody portraying this story in the way that they did, because they did a really good job of showing what the Black experience has evolved into and how Black American can come out of the mindsets that they're currently in. But yeah, in the very beginning, you do see some things that are very disturbing, because reality is sometimes hard to sit with. But I think it's essential to understanding how far we've come, right? And having a certain level of appreciation for the full circle of things. And if you see it in the end, if you see it all the way through, because most people just stop watching. They're like, I'm not watching this. Can't watch it past 2 episodes. 3rd episode is a no-go.
I know I'm going to watch it though. You got my interest now.
Yeah.
So
you got to watch it.
THEM.
Yes, you gotta watch it, and you gotta watch it through. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna watch the whole thing. I promise.
Whole thing, you know, and don't be in there like most clinicians diagnosing like, oh no, you're having a whole psychotic break. Right. But no, it's more empowering than not. Mm-hmm. If you watch it and you can kind of see the storyline unveiling as it kind of moves past, I think the third or fourth episode, but it's a great watch. Mm-hmm. It is. And to see things come full circle, I think can be very empowering for the Black community. Absolutely. So I feel like that's one thing that can help build resiliency in us. I think seeing ourselves for what we truly are and for our greatness, I think people can benefit from that. We can start reshaping some of the perceptions and the vicarious traumas that we're handing down innately. You know, not necessarily intentionally.
Right. Yeah. It's subconsciously. We don't even know we're doing it.
Exactly.
I want to ask a quick question on this, okay? Because, you know, I've been trying to think of the best way to go about this without, listen, as a Black woman who's born in America, I take a lot of pride in my culture. I take a lot of pride in even what we're doing today. Like, I love the way that we dance. I love the way that we have rhythm. I love the way that we can participate in sports. And of course, I love the intellect. I mean, all of the things that we do, I'm amazed by. But, you know, there's every once in a while, I'll just turn on the radio and I'll just be like, I just cannot believe, you know, they just said this out of their mouth. Yes. And, you know, and it's just like, and so it just, when I hear you talk about, you know, just kind of, I mean, our legacy, you know, so all the potential we have all these great gifts, all these talents, and sometimes just how do you make sense of basically how strong our history is? Like with slaves, you're right. They didn't beat their spirit. I don't know how it couldn't, but you know, there's tons of
I think there is levels to it. I think that we have to first be strong enough to explore the true understanding of slavery in its own right. Your husband is from Ghana, so he's not far from where these things began in its own right. So I'm sure his grandparents,
places, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
if he doesn't have any, he might not would like hearing this, but he doesn't have any strong. That's another piece. He's also detached from it. I mean, he went to school literally right down the street from where the slave ships was, and only's been there a handful of times.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, in Africa, in various African nations, there is a lot of rich history about the beginning and the formation of slavery. Slavery wasn't something that was forced on Africans. Oftentimes, that's what most people are forced to believe. But they had slavery already in existence before colonizers came to them for assistance. And the idea of, so a lot of people who left Africa as slaves, they left with the notion already that they would be and set different standards for their, you know, kids and their grandkids to come, because they wanted to one day be out of it, right? And in Africa back then, there was no out of it. So it was a form of punishment. And so when you break laws and things like that, I think they definitely have made some segue, but I think there is still a long way to go. And it's even worse in so many different parts of Africa now. Like there are some areas of undeveloped areas in Africa, and it's a lot of bad things that go on there, you know, and most people in the world don't know about it because they don't have access to Wi-Fi or internet or power, you know. Even now, and it is just crazy to me somehow, you know, sometimes how far removed people can be from the realities of the world that we still live in. But you know, I think that's what it is. It was a normative thing, so they are not negatively impacted, because apparently that means his line of people are more
powerful.
Well, yeah, but they're upstanding.
I've had to bring it to his attention that he sounds like white people, you know, who say, what's the big deal? You know, I mean, but the irony is, then he came here where he was Black like us, you know, right. And he had an opportunity to see
what it's like.
Exactly. That humbled him significantly. but I think for the people who are listening, we should know that our experience is unique, but it's up to us to figure out how we want to make it work for us and grow from
it. Right. We have to look at the fact that things could be a lot worse. And I know that's a terrible way to kind of say it, but it's the reality of it. There are lines of people, there are heritages that were gone, ended there. Legacies ended there because they worked their fingers to the bone and they had no kids, and their slavery line ended in Africa. It didn't come here to a land where they could one day be free.
Absolutely.
People here are descendants of greatness. And so we have to give ourselves grace and permission given to explore those traumatized areas of ancestors with a different lens. And when we do that, we can be empowered because we can see what they really became from that. And what they really became is financially stable people with a really, really good eye for mathematics, very charismatic and intelligent Black people, great sense of style. You understand? It was a lot. There's a lot to be admired. And I feel like we have declined in culture because those types of grandparents that handed down the legacy and handed down the truth of the lines, the lineage of what it meant to be an African American back then, those people died without having given enough of the story and impact to their kids and grandkids and things like that. So I think that when
it was outlawed. Like, I mean, you get in trouble talking about, especially communicating and teaching the language and stuff like that. Like, you could be punished for doing that.
Well, when immediately following slavery, and I say immediately following slavery because it took a while for it to actually end here.
Correct.
So in about 1910 to because my grandfather was born 1920, 1916, something like that. Between then, right? So about maybe 1910 to about 1935, there was a serious transition that took place. And that's where Black Wall Street was formed. So a lot of that has a lot to do with the successes of Black culture after slavery actually ended and what that transition really looked like. So sharing in their culture was not out loud at that time. That's a fallacy that we've been given to believe because it was outlawed when slavery was in existence.
Correct.
But when there was space and time for folks to really develop themselves and they took their land opportunities that were given to them, they made a very good investment. They built their community. They had their own.
What has happened? Like, what would you say? I mean, I've got people who will celebrate every January Martin Luther King holiday because they don't have to go to school or work, but couldn't tell you who the man was. If their life depended
anything about him.
Yeah. How do we connect? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do the school? Yet you said the school's not teaching us.
Yeah,
when they do, they're teaching us the version that make them look not too bad. Excuse the way I said it, but they're not giving us the facts. So, how do you have any suggestions?
My suggestion is for Black people to do their own research and start to get a little bit more acquainted with the unsung. So the folks that were not talked about as much in history, to expand the palette of education and the thirst for knowledge, right? Around Black culture and successes. I think that there is a lot to be rendered here recently. They started to dig up and to let people into some of the information they tried to hide about Tulsa and the burning down of Black Wall Street. So I think that that's a great opportunity for Black people to step into their grace finally. I think that people need to grab onto that knowledge and continue to allow that to flourish, allow that insight from that time to flourish, not the detriment of the massacre. Because there were some great successes that during that week, even though it's a terrible thing, a lot of lives were lost, both Black and white. There were some great successes in that event in of itself. It's a great takeaway. to see what was going to happen.
I'm embarrassed to say I'm not totally familiar even with what you're talking about. I mean, I have heard of it, but I don't know the details either. So do you have a suggestion of where we can kind of go to get some more information about it?
Well, right now it's a huge thing. Since about 98 or so, I know myself and a whole group of advocates, we've been fighting for this information to be released from the public. So what happened is back in, 1920, I think it was May 31st, 1920, it started everything, and it kind of cycled. There's a young man on the elevator with a white woman. And like I said, this is post-slavery,
right?
But it's during what they call integrated segregation.
Okay.
So it's a time, because Black people after slavery didn't want anything to do with white people.
No, of course not.
And Black people had their own government, and whites had their own government as they moved into a place of trying to create safety. Because a lot of people think that, we weren't given our 40 acres and that's a lie too. Okay. They were given that space, and they went to build in this space near Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
That's where most people migrated. You had some that went to like California, some went to New York to work and Chicago to work. But this was like the centralized place for Black success. And so this is where you had all of the Black engineers coming up and railway workers and things like that, right? You had them coming up in a space where they could actually excel and have apprentices that were also Black to create success in lines, banking, all of that, finances, all of that. And they were so successful, they had laws that banned Blacks and whites from inhabiting residences, purchasing land where 25% more, 30% more was the other race.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this was a protective factor because, of course, post-slavery, you had trust issues.
Of course.
And so they wanted a chance to really build something. And I think they did a really, really good job. They had their stores, they had their farmers markets, they had their houses, they had their construction agencies, businesses, finances, banks, and things like that. And they were doing very well. But you also had a lot of sundown towns to get to them. Okay. And so they were so successful in their plight. This one encounter spiraled angry mobs of white people because this encounter where this young Black man was on the elevator with this white woman, she was startled, to say the least. She rolled, I think, 2 or 3 floors down on the elevator with him, and when he got off the elevator, he ran out, and she was like, had this stale look on her face, and she never gave a statement saying that he assaulted her or did anything to her. I think it's just the fact that she was shocked to be in the same space in the same time.
Black man.
You know what I mean? Right. And he was too. They were equally startled. But the sheriff of the town was a white guy, and he had a compact with the Black Caucus, and the Black Caucus happened to be like Black leadership. So it was like those Black people that fought in the war, World War I. And they were very well respected people, and they had their own way of managing, engaging the Black community. So he went and he arrested this guy so he could provide protection for him. Okay. Because you got to understand, Blacks and whites didn't live in the same neighborhood, and he wanted to prevent anything from happening because there were a lot of white people asking, because it was a white bail guy who saw this. So of course, word is going to get back. So he provided protection for this guy. The whole time he was locked up, and they provided protection for him after he called the Black Caucus to help. Because the crowd was growing outside trying to get the man. They wanted to hang him.
Wow.
They were convinced that he had done something to her, even though she's denying it. Denied it to the police, denied it to them. And so they were like, he did something. And in that space, that chaos, there was some words exchanged between one of the Black Caucus members, because they had their little gang, and I think it was maybe like 200 to 300 of them. And you got to think about it. You got a growing amount of the whites, coming up. So it was maybe over 900 of them. So my grandfather says, because he was small during this time, and the fight broke out, a gun was fired. And then after that, gunfire on both ends of it, trying to clean it up. They still protected this guy. Nobody ever got inside of the jail. National Guard was called to help assist, and fight off the angry mob and things like that. But there were a lot of people who lost their lives that day. A lot. In the aftermath, when they were trying to protect the Blacks and put them in concentration camps, like to remove them from their homes so that nothing could happen to them overnight, that ended up being a bad idea as well, because their city was then burned down.
Oh, wow.
You see what I'm saying? So it's a lot that came with that in the aftermath. And when he was released from jail, he left town because he felt like he was the start of all of it. And then you also have like a lot of Blacks after leaving the camps. They left town too because indentured territory, they didn't want to have to rebuild, and it just left a very sour impact on a lot of those people. So a lot of them traveled south, started to rebuild, family members in different places and stuff like that. But Black Wall Street, as we knew it back then, ceased to exist again after that. You had Black Panther Party try and come back and revamp it. Because some of the people who were a part of that experience migrated to the northern states, and they couldn't do it because they tried to hide the stories. They removed it from the newspapers, the clippings and things like that. So now you have people who own land in these spaces where they dug these shallow graves. And so now it's all being unveiled. So Congress is now looking into it. They've unearthed over, I think it was 200, 300 bodies.
What?
In the last year. Yeah, coronavirus has been going on, so it hasn't been the centralized theme anymore. But they're still unearthing bodies, and they want to give proper burials and graves and, things like that. So it's a lot to it. So I urge the people that are listening that are from either community, because I think that it creates a sense of understanding of where we really come from as people and how we've evolved as a nation. And it definitely helped me understand my grandfather's sentiments and things like that when I came and I got to know him around 11 years old or so. And I think that we have to be people that are resilient because our ancestors wanted a different outcome. It's not about the journey of becoming. It's about where you end up.
Absolutely.
So you can't stay in the trauma. You know what I mean? Finding your purpose is about being resilient, finding strengths in negative experiences, and continuing to persevere because you know that the outcome is worth it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Is there a myth that you'd like to debunk for Black families about finding your purpose?
Yeah.
Okay.
That the white man is preventing you from stepping into a place of greatness.
I love it. Please.
Who is he?
More.
Find him. Where is he?
What's his name?
Yeah. What does he look like? Can we get a drawing of him? So nothing can stop you from reaching your goals. Nothing, unless it's you. Everything is inside of you. So, like I said earlier, perception is reality. If you want it bad enough, you will achieve it. I mean, we see a lot of young men going out here, and they're very intentional in eliminating one another's lives. Okay, in the Black community, we take and we turn a blind eye to that. But I say we can look at the experiences, right? We can look at how resilient they are in trying to kill each other in these gang wars. And we can ask them to repurpose that energy towards building their brand, building a business, contributing to the community, giving back, putting the guns down, taking a stance against violence, right?
Absolutely.
And helping people to find their common ground so they can move forward in a purpose-driven way, that doesn't lead to the exile of our people.
Love it. I'm glad you said that because I recently it was actually a few years ago, several years ago actually, interacted with someone who sold drugs. And I was curious, actually, okay, this is an ex-boyfriend, I'll admit it. I try to be bashful, but let me just be vulnerable. And when I was in high school, and he was explaining to me, I was curious. I said, how do you do this? By the time he had explained, like, that is a sophisticated...
I tell you, exactly.
I was like, why don't you just use that
and go legit?
Yeah, yes. Yes.
Right.
Why would you waste? Exactly.
I'm telling you, like when I tell you, I meet some of the most, you hear a lot of negative thoughts and a lot of negative regards about people in what we call impoverished neighborhoods. But the reality is people are using the system to get to where they need to be and set them up. Okay. Set themselves up. We all know the plan. We know the plot. We know the system. We know the process. Okay. And I understand if you have a healthy ends to your means, I'm 100% for you. But make sure you use it to its fullest capacity. Make sure while you're having that time, off from working, help your kids cultivate greatness and shape greatness and purpose out of their lives. Okay, don't have them going out here leaning to the streets, because that's not going to yield long-term goals. You don't want your kids to become a hashtag. We talk about police brutality and violence and targeting Black America. We have to ask ourselves, what is it in our culture that creates a sense of we're a threat? Period. Because we're not back in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
We're not.
No, we're not.
We're not. And I think that we use that as a crutch to, okay our patterns of behaviors that are negative, and we feel like we don't have, the power to change. But we do. We have the power to teach and preach and show these kids that there are other ways to resolve your issues.
I love it.
Those are my things. I just think that we could do so much as a culture. We could do so much better, but we're in our way.
Absolutely. We're in our own way.
Yeah, we got to get out of our own way.
Yeah.
And allow our greatness to truly shine. We're very, very smart people, very resourceful.
Absolutely. We wouldn't have been able to make it through what we've made it through if we weren't.
Exactly. These young guys selling drugs, they have some solid business plans.
Oh, man. Get you an LLC, get you one of these PPP loans or something.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm telling you, they have a lot of potential, but I feel like it's just untapped. And they're looking for support in the wrong places. You have to sometimes look within, because the answers you have them, nobody else does.
Absolutely. You hear that, guys and ladies? It's we want to say, well, my dad wasn't there, or he's in jail, my mom did this, and those things might be true, and I'm sure they are. But at the end of the day, there's something in you that you have to tap into to take you to the next level.
Exactly. And you have to find that. Be curious, be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to step into those spaces where your trauma shines through, and it's difficult, because you have to find ways to ground yourself and keep you present in this moment as you re-experience that trauma through a different lens. I think that when we give ourselves permission to do that, and we go back and we re-explore our experiences, and maybe go outside, put your feet in the grass and wiggle your toes while you're reflecting, or find yourself in the air, finding a focus on breathing and the smells around you. There are lots of ways for us to get ourselves there, but we have to do it where we're grounded, where we can bring ourselves back to the here and now safely when we're re-experiencing those traumatic events and finding out what we could have done a little bit differently. Absolutely. And it's not the same as a lot of folks say, oh, that's victim shaming, but it isn't.
It's not.
That's called victim resonating. So we're helping people to resonate with their experiences in a different way, so they can take the lessons out, so that the lessons are standing out and it guides their next move. You understand? more so than looking to blame, we're looking for just accountability. Why was I really here in this moment where this happened?
Wow, love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Dr. Jefferson, you just shared so much. I wanted to pique your brain for another part of the show. And we're going to be wrapping it up soon. This is one of the longer episodes that we've done, but I'm just so fascinated by your wisdom and what you have to say. And I know the audience will be as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. So this is this part of the episode is called What's Good. And What's Good is just a place where I give you a hypothetical situation and you kind of coach the person through the process. Okay? Can we do that?
Awesome.
Meet Nikita. Nikita is a 14-year-old Black female from a very rural, small place in the United States. She's smart. She makes good grades. She's sociable. She has a great intellectual side to her. She's very involved in school. She's very involved in sports and clubs and things like that. However, her setting is very limited. None of her parents went to college. She's never seen anybody do anything with their life. All of her peers either end up selling drugs or having babies right outside of high school and working at local jobs without exploring their territories. How can you advise her to tap into her potential and come out and do something with herself?
So you said she's in a very rural space, and she doesn't have a lot of familial supports that she has direct access to.
Correct. Or the ones that she has, they don't know anything about what she wants to do.
I would say to find her thing that makes her tick. Have her spend some time, reflecting kind of on what she sees as her goals in life. And also asking the questions of why did you select something that's outside of your connectivity system. So your connectivity system is your primary family of origin. So the people that are tethered to you naturally by way of family lines, familial lines. And oftentimes we're people, just being the human race, creatures of habit. We select something for us to do that resonates with what we've observed directly. And that's typically tied to your system. So your parents' job, aunt's job, grandmother's job, uncle's job, somebody close to you. However, we also have to give credit to media, social, and environment, and their experiences that they yield to us. So when we ask the question of why did I select something that I'm interested in that's outside of what I've been exposed to primarily by my family system, what we're doing is we're trying to tap into her potential for greatness.
Correct.
Every once in a while, there is this one. Everybody says, I only have that one kid. A lot of folks call them the prodigal sons. They're not necessary. That's not necessarily the negative connotation that we give to that thing. The reality is this person wants to become something greater than what they have seen directly. So something has inspired them to become that greater element, right? And so when we tap into that motivator, that one thing that motivates us to be different, and we allow that to shape our experiences moving forward, that's the one thing that's going to keep us grounded in where we're going. We're able to clearly define our goals in life, and we're able to overcome the obstacles that may be presented before us in the future, as well as find the lines of delineation of the lessons that life yields in our experiences right now in our current exposures. And so sometimes it might look like seeing a couple of very traumatizing elements. Like I've dealt with kids that, they came home one day and lived in the projects and saw dead bodies.
Wow.
Right. And made a decision then that I want to be something great, don't know what it is, right? But I want to be something different that takes me out of this situation. Absolutely. If we keep that, to allow that to guide our interactions in life, we will always rise above and we will always remain resilient because we'll look at what that trauma means for us.
Absolutely. Okay.
And so, that's definitely what I would advise. Just look within, figure out what that motivator is, and stay tethered to it. Allow that to guide your spirit and your interactions from then on.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, Dr. Jefferson, you have been a wealth of information and insight to our audience today. I'm so grateful that you decided to join us on the show. Before we wrap up, can you let our readers know where they can find you and work with you and follow you if they want to?
Okay, well, if you guys are on social media, typically all of my platforms are DocLQJ, DOCLQJ. So what is it? Facebook.com/DocLQJ.
And I'll put it in the show notes.
Awesome. And then also I have my own podcast, Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. And I also do like video casts and things like that on YouTube and on Facebook and Twitter, all that good stuff. So just if you type in Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson, I should definitely come up.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you again for your time. I wish you the most of success in what you're doing and keep inspiring people to live in their purpose. We appreciate you joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you. And it's been great talking with you.
All right. Take care. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. Since you've listened all the way through, come on in and join the family. If you haven't done so yet, please join our free community where we offer weekly trainings and monthly giveaways. We can be found on Facebook under the Black Marriage and Families Matter Facebook group. And since you're serious about joining our family, we also invite you to join our All In campaign, which signifies your commitment to go all in, not only for yourself, but in helping us reach more people by downloading this podcast wherever you are listening to it, leaving us a review, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This really helps us reach more people and change more lives. After all, Dr. Martin Luther King once said, we can all get more done together than we can apart. With that said, I want to encourage you to share this episode with just 3 other people who you think might also benefit from our community and what we are offering, with the hopes that all of you can join our All In campaign. When you're done, simply click the link All In campaign in the bio and receive a free copy of my course entitled Goodbye Toxicity, which is valued at $297. This course will help you to work through some of the difficult experiences that arise in most of our relationships, and it's completely free to you with your commitment to join our All In campaign. We look forward to connecting with you every Monday and Wednesday. Thanks for listening.